Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we are on the dev server for the Drone Age update, and what we're going to be looking at in the first video of a series will be, of course, the ground vehicles. Now, when it comes to this dev server, we will cover everything on it, all of the different vehicles in different ways, shapes or forms. So all you have to do is just kind of wait for them, and we'll do all of them collectively, so stuff like naval, ground and aviation, and then also individual ones looking at specific vehicles. We'll also do a few looking at the mechanics that are coming in as well, just so everything is covered. One thing to note is, remember, this is a dev server. That means that everything is subject to change. Things will probably change before they hit live, so I'll try and keep you up to date when it comes to changes, but these things usually happen pretty quickly and over the matter of a few days. Starting off, when it comes to America, they get access to the M36B2. The M36B2 is pretty much a copy of the one that you find in the Japanese tree, which was added last update, but they've decided to spread the love and move it into different areas. You can see here with the M36B2, it's at 5.7, and for the Americans, it's also at 5.7. There's no difference really between it and the other machines. It has access to the Heat FS, which is really nice at 5.7, has access to the 50 cal on the top of it, and also the decent reload with the very good gun depression. This is one of the better tank destroyers in the game, thanks to its 90mm and also its nice rounds that it has access to. It pretty much just burns through any heavy tank armor that you'll find. At 5.7 as well for the Americans, you have a pretty decent lineup, or at least a decent lineup at 5.3, but at 5.7 you have access to the HVSS Sherman, and then also you can throw in the Hellcat if you want to, as well, to have a bit of fun with. Remember, when it comes to a lot of these vehicles, they have got added additions. The M18, for some reason, the M62 shell for me is not researched. I'm guessing they removed it from me for some reason. But a lot of them now have access to the drone modification, which is a new thing, which is coming in for a lot of light vehicles from rank 6 and 7. I will be discussing this in a separate video just to kind of show you what it's like. But that is for America, the M36B2. For Germany, they get the Proto Panther. Now, the Proto Panther is actually a pretty cool vehicle. If you like the standard Panther D, you will enjoy the VK3002M. This is going to be coming in at 5.0, and it is just going to be before the Panther D. One of the major issues with Germany, if you actually have a look at its tanks, it has this weird gap for mediums between 3.7 and 5.3. The Proto Panther is designed to kind of fill this gap, and maybe we'll get a few more vehicles in here to try and fill that gap a little bit better. But what it is it's very similar to the Panther D, has all of its benefits and shortcomings, mainly the one about the turret rotation being pretty bad in the vehicle itself, but the major difference is that this gets slightly less armor. So it only has a 60mm plate on the front of it. If you compare that to the Panther D, it has an 80mm plate. You can see also there's variable thickness for the Panther D on the turret, and also you've got 100mm on the back here, so 80 and 100. If you have a look at the Proto Panther, you have that 80mm instead of 100. So overall, its armor is definitely not as good. It will mean that this upper glacis will be quite easy to pen, and if you can't pen that, you can always shoot the cupola, and if you can pen that, it will bounce down and then kill the whole crew that's inside. It's a 5-man crew, so it's very similar to the Panther, the only real difference being the armor. The gun will still be very good. It has access to the APC-BC cell, the PZGR3942, very good penetration, and also pretty decent reload. It has access to smoke grenades, even though it's a prototype, which is kind of surprising. You can see them over here. It doesn't reverse, which is another problem with the Panthers. You can see only 4 kilometers going backwards, so that's going to be a bit of a problem, but this should be pretty fun. And once again, bridging that gap that we talked about. For the USSR, they get a few interesting toys for ground. So first of all, you got the T60. Now this isn't new. This has actually been here for a long time, since the game has had ground forces back in, was it 2014 or 2015? But what you see is an updated model. So after them updating the Panzer II's last update, now we're having the T60 updated. And I think this is actually because of Enlisted. Enlisted is a free-to-play FPS, which is basically published by Gaijin and developed by Darkflow Software. They're very close to the War Thunder team, and they both seem to kind of work on features and functions together for each of the separate games. And to see an updated model like this kind of out of the blue, it's suspected that that means it's designed more for Enlisted than, of course, War Thunder. But it's still nice to see. At the end of the day, won't change it at all. Just changes its armor profile a bit, but it's not exactly, you know, gonna stop any rounds now. The T-80 UK is a new squadron vehicle which is coming in for the Soviets. This is going to be a rank 7 battle rating 10.7 vehicle. So the first rank 7 squadron vehicle for the Soviets. It's an upgraded T-80U. The main differences between the T-80U and the T-80 UK is the UK gets access to systems which probably aren't that useful. It gets access to the Stora 1. This is the same APS system that is on, or APS that is on the T-90A. It is designed to kind of stop wire-guided missiles. The problem with this, of course, is the T-80 UK doesn't face wire-guided ATGMs, so they're not really going to be useful in the vast majority of scenarios. Also, it does have the ERA. It has Contact 5 on it, and it has the standard setup from the T-80U, so it does have the improved reverse speed compared to a lot of the other Soviet vehicles, which is nice, and also the better reload at 6.5 seconds. So they've picked a good variant to put in as a squadron vehicle. It also gets access to 3BM46, which pens 532-449-308, which is really good, and an extra little addition is it has access to an LWS LR, so it has the laser warning system, so if you're getting attacked by something like a helicopter or something similar to that, you'll be able to defend yourself. It does also get the dozer on the bottom of it, so if you want to dig holes you can do. Always nice to make a sandcastle. And it, of course, has all of the grenades which are sat on the turret. Backed up by the NSVT, which is a very fun machine gun on the top of it. This one will be nice to play. And also, as somebody who's fully spaded the T-80U, I had a fantastic time in it. The only issues really with it are the gun depression, but since your mobility is really good in the vehicle, you can generally sort that out, you know, pretty well. The upgrades that this thing gets aren't really huge upgrades over the standard T-80U, so not a surprise to see it at the same BR. The Skink is the next vehicle which is on the list, and this is coming in for good old Britain. The Skink is going to be in the AA line, no surprise there, and it's going to be between the Istavak and the Falcon. At 4.7, the major difference between this and a lot of the other AAs around the area is this thing is actually pretty well armored. So it has access to the 4 Polston 20mm, which are just Oerlikons, which are made more efficiently and cheaply, so they should have exactly the same stats as them. When you have a look at the rounds it has access to, it has AP and HE, so you have HET and APT, pens up to 42mm on the AP round, which isn't really going to set the world on fire, but it will be completely fine to be able to do stuff with. It does have artillery, which is nice, and the main thing is the turret rotation is really good on the machine. It has pretty good vertical guidance, and even though each of the guns only has about 30 rounds to them, giving you a total of 120 and let's say an overall clip, the reload is less than 5 seconds, so it won't be too hard to reload them and get them back up. The reload will obviously get affected if the loader dies, because, you know, he's sat in the turret, but at that point you're probably kind of screwed if you've already been shot in that area. The main positive of the Skink over a lot of the other AA vehicles at around 4.7 is it actually has a decent amount of armor on the turret. For these guys down here, the machine gunner and the driver, there's 50mm protecting it from the top. From the top on the turret, you have 42mm to 50mm, or 42 to 60. And what this pretty much means is it's going to be very hard to top-down kill with certain guns, which would be much easier to use on other vehicles. One of the problems that you have with stuff like the Ostwind, for example, the Ostwind 2 or the Whirlwind, is that it is very easy to top down them, just like the M42, the M19, and all of these open top vehicles. The Skink won't have that issue because it'll have this extra armor. You'll still be able to penetrate the different areas such as the engine block. It's only 20mm, so that'll be easy to go through, and the back is only 40, so that will also be not too hard to do. Overall, it's really nice to see it. I've been looking forward to this for an incredibly long time when it comes to War Thunder, and it's finally here. And it's also part of a really nice lineup. The 471, Churchill, Sherman Firefly, Avenger, everything like that. Fantastic to see overall. The Japanese get access to the Type 16P. Now, the Type 16P is the prototype version of the standard Type 16. It's very similar to it. It's obviously slightly weaker than it, but not in huge areas. One of the massive benefits of the Type 16 in the game at rank 7 is at 9.0 it gets a mega round. It gets access to the Type 93 shell, which pens 405, 342, 234. The Type 16P doesn't get access to this shell, but it does get the M735 round, which is completely commendable at 8.7. It also gets the LWSLR and gets the scouting mechanic, and also gets access to the pretty decent thermals. The Type 16 gets really good thermals in the game, like the Gen 3 I think it is, whereas the Type 16P you can see kind of shares it from its brother, which is really good. The other thing is it has good mobility, and it also has access to a drone, which is something we'll see more of when it comes to these general little vehicles. You can see the drone kind of struggles to go forward by itself, but you can stabilize it as always, and kind of target enemies, which is quite cool. And yeah, we'll be talking about these a bit more in another video. So yeah, enjoy it as when we have a look at it. But no, there's a ton of really cool stuff. They also added a bunch of different. Kind of effects when it comes to fire. You can kind of see here it's a little bit buggy right now, but it looks super nice. And there's a ton of stuff to have a look at, but we'll do that in a future video once again. What you're seeing here is a Type 16 which has access to a very good lineup in the form of the Type 74s, the Type 89, the Type 87, and also won't be as hard to spade because it's not under the line like its brother, the Type 16, so that should be pretty nice. The Chinese get a donkey vehicle. This is the AFT-9. It's basically the PTL-02 chassis, which we've seen before, but instead of giving it the really nice gun that the PTL-02 has, you get 4 missiles in the form of the HJ-9s. Now, it does have 2 reloads, so you get 12 rounds overall, which isn't that bad. It's got a pretty good gun depression, I suppose. But you are incredibly tall anyway to be able to, motor around in. And this thing is leveled as a tank destroyer, so it doesn't get scouting because there is no god. I don't understand why they don't give these things scouting. Would be much nicer for them, but unfortunately that is not the case. The vehicle is wheeled, so it'll be good on certain surfaces and not good on others. It has access to the HJ9, which is a tandem ATGM, which is really nice. Pens 850, 736, 425. Also has pretty good speed behind it, so it's going to be kind of hard to stop it if it comes in. But you do have APSs and stuff, which can kind of help that out. But it's another ATGM vehicle which doesn't really have anything else to do. You can see it has the Gen 1 thermals, which unfortunately aren't as good as others. But you can see against the APS of the Brennus, it doesn't care about it, so maybe later APSs will work. There's also another thing we'll talk about, which is the thing that we looked in the dev blog today when it comes to movable pieces, which is pretty cool. But yeah, the AFT-9 is just a massive box with no armor, with nice ATGMs on it. I don't know why you'd ever take this over an IFV or something like the PTL-02. Talking about good vehicles, you have the VRCC. This is the new premium for the high echelons of the Italians. If you remember, with the OF40 MTCA, they changed it into a GE vehicle. The VRCC is what came in to replace it. It has a pre-order for it, which is pretty nice, and has access to the 105mm Automalara 105. This is the Spanish variant of the Centauro, and basically what it is, it's a heavily upgraded standard Centauro, which has access to a lot of the bells and whistles of the Centauro 120, which you see quite here. So in the game now, we have the Pre-Series, you have the Romo, and then you have the VRCC, and of course the 120. The 120 is really nice because its reload is beautiful. This thing has a pretty good reload as well for the 105, and also it has access to smoke, has access to really good thermals, has access to scouting, has access to DM33 and the LWSLR. This will be a fantastic vehicle. The Centauro has very good mobility. It doesn't really soak shots too well if people know where to shoot it, but it can get into positions super quickly and be very, very powerful. Also at 9.0 for Italy, you have a fantastic lineup already. The Romor, the VCC 8060, the Leopard 185, the VBC if you want to throw that thing in, and also, of course, the Pre-Series Centauro. So, and the 040 Mark II. The only issue with this lineup is its planes aren't very good, but from a ground point of view, it's very, very strong. So if you want to grind through Italy with something, this is not a bad pick for those different reasons. For France, they get, once again, the M36B2. This is slightly different to the other two M36s, though. You can see it's between the ARL 44 and also the CA Lorraine, since it's at 5.7. So the big difference between this and the Japanese one and the American one is that it has an extra 30 cal, which is not going to make any difference, really, unless you are facing stuff which is very much open-topped, but everything else about it is exactly the same. So it has the Heat FS, it has the M82, has the stock T33, and no artillery or anything, so it should be a good vehicle. The only problem with it is it doesn't have a lineup, whereas the American one does, and should be pretty fun. The French one, it does have the backing of the ARL-44 and the Jumbo, but you don't really want to up-tier those machines to maybe a 6-7 level if you get up-tiered, so that's a bit of a problem with it. Sweden gets a bunch of weird stuff. So first of all, we start off with the PBV-302 Bill. This is a rank 6 tank destroyer, even though on the dev blog it labeled it as a light tank. It doesn't get access to scouting, so this thing is dead on arrival. It's a box with an ATGM on it. The ATGM is the Bill ATGM, the RB56 Bill 2. This is a top-down attack missile. I actually used it on the STRF way back in the day, and I've got to say, it worked about half the time, and the other half of the time it got stuck on stuff like machine guns. They have improved it since then, so it's a lot better than it used to be, so hopefully that'll be good. Has access to smoke, and also a 20mm, which only pens 44mm. You can see the 20mm right here. Being a TD means that it has no extra stuff, so no artillery, doesn't have access to scouting, so it's dead on arrival. Hopefully they add those things to it, or at least the scouting to make it a little bit better. It does have MBDs though, so the non-existent night battles at this BR you won't, or you will be able to see in, so that's good. But yeah, it's a box. You'll be able to hide it behind stuff and shoot down. I would much prefer to take the other one for Sweden though than this thing, which is of course the, not the USH, but the UDES 33 that you can find here. So a bit of a rough one. It will get machine gunned to death as well, which is not very fun, at least through these sides. Then we have a new premium. This is actually a GE premium that's coming in for the Swedish. It's going to be at 9.0. The Leopard 185 NO is what it is. This is actually, as you can see, a Norwegian version of the Leopard 185. They're chucking it into the Swedish tree to kind of make it, you know, the whole Scandinavian Nordic tree kind of deal that people have talked about. The detail on this vehicle is fantastic. There's a lot of really cool stuff on it. It reminds me of the premium Leopard 2A4, which has a bunch of just little things everywhere. You can see the detail that's gone into this thing to really give it a beautiful feel. So very happy to see that. And some of the decals like these can't be removed. They're just on all of the skins, so understand that. It does have some additional armor on the front of it. 5mm. So don't be Don't be crazy high on it. It also has the standard reload for the 105. It has the L7A3. The Leopard 1A5 is in the German tech tree. It's also in the Italian tech tree. So if you played those tech trees, you'll be used to this thing. Has access to DM33, a very good round for 9.0. Has access to Gen 1 thermals, laser rangefinder, artillery, smoke, all of the things you want from an MBT, and it will work very, very well. Good gun depression, good turret rotation, good mobility. The Leopard is kind of the gold standard, at least the early ones, when you have a look at what you want out of a vehicle in War Thunder, which is an MBT, and a 9.0, you can't go wrong with this. Only issue with it, of course, is lineup. You have the STRV 105 and nothing else. So that's a bit of a problem, but could be improved with time. Then you have the CV90 105 XC8. Now this one is kind of interesting. So what's happening with this one is this is replacing the CV90 105 TML. The reason why it's replacing it is because unfortunately there are some historical inaccuracies with the TML, meaning that it's by Gaijin's rules it should be removed, or at least if it has a replacement it should be removed. So everybody who owns right now the CV90 105 TML will instead, when the next update comes out, receive the XC8, and the TML will disappear. So you don't have to rebuy this if you already have the TML. This one will just straight up replace the TML, which is in the premium section for you. So this one will become the vehicle to buy when it comes to a premium if you don't want to buy the Leopard 1A5, which is also being brought alongside of it. There are some differences between it and the TML. It has access to LWSLR, but it has also the DM33, the Scout UAV, the scouting, the very good thermals for the gunner and the tank commander. And also the other difference is that it actually has an autoloader. So it has a first stage ammo storage of 10 pieces, which are fired at 5-second intervals. So once you run out of them, you're going to have to reload it since it's an autoloader, but overall it will still be very powerful to be able to do a lot around it. So this is looking like a very nice vehicle, which is why they've up BR'd it to 9.3. I used to up BR the TML anyway to stuff like 10.0, and it was always pretty useful. But one of the problems with being at 9.3 is the fact that there isn't any vehicles really at 9.3 apart from the 9040B, which is pretty fun. So, at least you got that going for you. The last nation that is getting a bunch of ground vehicles is the Israelis. And somebody decided, you know what Israel needs? Millions more Magaks. So Israel is getting a ton of different Magaks, ranging from M48s to M60s, and they're all coming in to the left-hand tree, which means that this left-hand tree is going to be an absolute mess. They also have a Makava coming in, so there is that also. We have the Magak 3. This is an M48. It has the 105mm and also a ton of machine guns on it. The difference between this and other ones, it has the heat, it has the Sabo stock and a rangefinder, which is quite nice. The Magak 5, which is higher BR at 8.0. It has some extra ERA on it, so it has the Blazer ERA, very similar to the premium one, and it doesn't have a stabilized gun, so the 105 is still unstabilized and has quite a low targeting speed. But what it does get is it does get the M111 round at 8.0, so that means it's a different BR to the Magak 3. The Magak 6R is, of course, a slightly different platform because, of course, we have now upgraded ourselves to the M60, whereas the M48 before, the Magak 5 is the M48. The Magak 6, you can see, has the M60 turret, or at least I believe it's the M60 turret. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it looks like an M60 turret to me. This one is definitely the M60. You know what? I'm going to stop saying things because I'm getting confused between them. So we have the Magak 6R, which is another MBT, has access to the 105mm Sharir once again. This one does have a stabilizer. So with these two, no stabilizers. The 6R gets a stabilizer, which means that it's going to be at 8.3. Also gets the M111 once again. The 6M, you can see the difference between them is the fact that the 6R only gets MVDs. The 6M gets thermals. So that's the big difference between them. And also, what the 6M gets, a dozer blade, so you're able to dig up the ground if you want to. That's pretty cool. And also you get a pretty cool big area here that you can see. Then the 6C comes in, and the 6C has some different ERA. It actually has not the blazer stuff, it has more chemical protection on it, and also gets the M426 round and an LWSLR and thermals. So this gets more firepower, a stabilizer, a bit of more defense with the LWS, and also the thermals as well. So you can see they are all slightly different from each other, but very, very similar, at least when it comes to the approach and when they play. It will mean that you have more lineups for Israel. The main issue with Israel is CAS elements below 7.7, no AAs at certain tiers, and also no utility vehicles like light tanks, but why the hell not have 5 extra medium tanks? Then we have the Merkava Mark 3C, very similar to the Merkava Mark 3 that was added last update, has access to the M322 and LWSLR, the thermals and smoke grenades. This thing will be completely fine, it'll be very fun to play. I wish they put the Mark 3s in the left-hand line after the Galbatash, but instead they've decided to put them in the center line, which is between the Mark 2 and the Mark 4, which is completely fine at the end of the day. So that is all of the ground vehicles that are coming to the game in update Drone Age, and there's a ton of them. There might be more, there probably will be more going forward, but at least right now, this is all we got. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Nicholas Richardson, Elove Goat, Pyman675, Winter Scientist, Merciless Reaper, Jerry Prevolt, Megadino King, Orange Tail, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, Uncle Bean, Sem Arslan, Derek R., Bareen, Lafouche, and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.